Happy Friday, everyone. We are back with another episode of Movies to be Murdered by. This is Jeff Watson, along with my wonderful co host.
Hey guys, it's Jessie Drew.
And we're excited to be joining you again this week. And we decided on a movie to review. I know we left everyone with a cliffhanger the last time, but we ended up watching The Final Wish, and this is a movie that came out in 2018. It was released on October 17th, 2018 at the Screamfest Horror Film Festival, and Jesse picked this movie, and we kind of went back and forth with a few because this movie has one person in particular in it. I like started acting a little crazy probably when Jesse told me about it and told me that Tony Todd himself was in the movie. I said, well, I'm very eager to watch this now. But before I get into this brief summary, Jesse, how did you come across this film, and what made you choose it?
Okay, I was scrolling, what I, do with my life, scrolling on my phone. And I was actually on the Vudu app, and I don't know why, because I never go on it. And I was scrolling through their horror department and taking a stroll through their offerings, and I saw this movie. I saw that Tony Todd was mentioned. I clicked on it, and it seemed like it would be a good fit. I mean, you and I are both very big Tony Todd fans. I saw Lynn Shay in the little picture icon, which was it just seemed like it was interesting enough to me, the premise. So that was it. And then I messaged you, and we flipped up our planned programming, which
Yes.
was fine, because we'll get back to the other movie that we chose, I think probably next week.
Yeah.
And I was like, to watch it.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, I was too, and Lynn Shay and Tony Todd in a movie, like, sign me up for that. So,
Same. Yeah,
um,
same.
so let's get into it a little bit. This was directed by Timothy Woodward Jr. Again, this came out in October of 2018, and this film we first meet Aaron, who's played by Michael Welch, and he, he's an attorney. He's actually interviewing for this position at a law firm, and he's trying to, make his case for why he should be hired over others. And you can kind of tell that he's a little envious because he's probably up against some Ivy Leaguers who have law degrees. He even makes mention of that, as the person interviewing him did as well. Uh, Long story short, he doesn't get the job. He goes back to his apartment, and he's trying to, open the door, but for whatever reason, the lock won't work. And then he finds out the reason. It's because he's behind in his rent, and the landlord comes out and says, "Hey, you owe me $3,000," that kind of deal. So, as if things can't get any worse in these moments, he's missed out on a job, and now he's locked out of his apartment. He gets a phone call from Lisa back home, and she tells him that his father has passed away. So what we learn upon his return home is that he really doesn't go back home that much, and he's very disconnected. And I forget the gentleman's name, but he kind of approaches Aaron and says, "Hey, you may be a big city guy, a big city lawyer now, but don't forget where you came from." And so yeah, we see Aaron kind of trying to reconnect with his mother, trying to be there for her, but um, but it's just kind of falling on deaf ears. She's obviously emotional and and upset at the death of his dad and her husband. So um, I want to backtrack though. When we see Aaron for the first time, he's kind of um self-conscious about a a scar. I don't know if he was born with this. I think later on they say, they talk about the accident, but we never really find out what it was. But he's got looks like a hair lip, looks like a scar on his lip, and you can kind of sense that he's self-conscious about it. Anyway, I'll keep fast forwarding. So he gets home, and his dad was a collector of antiques, and you see all of this stuff in the house, and um, he's trying to help declutter. So he does a yard sale and all these things. His mom flips out on him, and he gets a visit from one of his friends who he hasn't seen in years, and his friend notices an urn, and he's like, man, that's really cool, and starts talking to him about it, and they smoke a little bit, and not tobacco, by the way.
Yeah.
Um,
They have
so
a tall glass of water.
yeah, so so yeah, they smoke, and they're talking about this urn. Well, all of a sudden, just things just start happening. He ends up getting a couple scratch off tickets at a gas station, and the first one was a dud, and the next one he wins $5,000, and he's got all of these things happening, and he sees his mom you know unhappy. He's like, I wish my mom were happy, and all of a sudden his dad shows up, the one that died earlier in the movie. um, so yeah, he shows up, and he's dancing with his wife, which is interesting. um, and there's just a lot of stuff that happens that there's a lot of underlying things that happen that I could probably take forever to cover, but we want you to watch this movie, um, so I won't give it all away. But uh, they keep going. They figure out that this urn is doing something. So then they go to Tony Todd, and
Woo woo.
yep, I actually did that when he popped up on the screen. Um,
I
it,
had to
it's
be I had to be quiet because like I was watching this on my phone in bed, like at night when my husband was like all passed out.
Yeah,
And so like I really wanted to be like, yeah, and, like do like a fist pump in the air and everything, but like
yeah,
I had to settle for just a quiet smile when I saw
yeah.
Tony Todd.
I was loud. I have to admit it. I was pretty
Nice.
loud. So they meet Tony Todd, and from the way things are described in the dialogue, I believe that he worked with Aaron's father. So he tells him about this urn and its origins, and um, so they continue on, and they find out that there's this man who had it previously, and he ended up killing his wife, but the daughter is still around, and um, the dad is in a mental institution. And actually, that's where the film actually opens up with that scene of the man of the daughter coming into their house, and you know it's creepy, and she finds her mom mutilated, and her dad is there, and
With like
that's
a
when we
samurai sword, which is
yeah, I
really
know,
odd
it was
because he's
yeah, it
like
was
an older, heavy-set white man with
yeah,
very blonde daughter and like a blonde wife, and he's just like, there with the
he's just
sword, like
wielding a samurai sword just all
totally, and
willy-nilly.
just like yeah, and just covered in blood. I thought he was gonna kill the daughter
I
because
did too.
she was laying on the floor. She had like
Yeah,
tripped over her dead mother, And then she's there like, Dad, don't. And he
No.
looks like he's about to, yeah, no. And like, he looks like, holding the sword, I think in the proper way too, if I'm remembering correctly, like
Yeah,
with his hands
he has some
properly and
good
everything.
technique.
He did. And then I thought he was just gonna like with her head and stuff, but
Yeah.
she wasn't touched at all. She was
No. No.
left
So
alive to tell the tale.
yeah. So Aaron and Lisa go find this daughter, and she takes them to her father in the mental institution, and he's telling Aaron, whatever you do, do not do 7 wishes. Don't do it. Don't do it to yourself for whatever reason. And there's that. I kind of got creeped out a little bit during that scene because the father did such a great job. He apparently during that opening scene, and why he didn't injure his daughter was because he cut his own tongue out. And he's writing everything frantically when they visit him in the mental institution, and the looks on his faces, I thought he really did a good job with that, because it brings another element of terror in that moment of finding out, like, well, how many wishes have you done so far? And he's like, well, 3. No, maybe it was 4. Okay, I definitely think it was 5. So you're like, holy crap, this dude's two away,
Yeah.
and he tells them, if you do 7, you'll lose your soul. And so we play out through the rest of the movie. He's faced with some dilemmas. Uh, should he make another wish, or should he just let things go? A lot of things happen. People around him begin to die. So he's faced with a dilemma. I will say that Aaron is not a very nice person. Um, he's kind
Mm-mm.
of a douche.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, like, as he's going through the movie, you see this, but he at times he's like trying to do the right thing. It just never ever goes that way for him, it seems. So we get to
Mm-mm.
the end of the movie, and he's faced with another choice, and he makes his choice, and roll credits. Again, I don't want to give away the spoiler. I don't want to give away the ending, because I feel like um,
I want to give it away.
you want to listen. If you want to give it away, you give it away. I will stand back and let you give it away.
Well, I guess we could talk about it like when we, after you're done with the synopsis.
Okay. Well, I'm done.
Oh, okay.
I'm done. Yeah, yeah.
All right. Well, I just want to like, I don't know why it was funny when I saw who was starring in it. Like, I didn't even look at the names. After I saw Lynn Shay and Tony Todd, I was all in, so it didn't matter who else was in it. But I
Right.
did recognize the guy who plays Aaron. Michael Welch is actually the dweeb from the Twilight movies who has a crush on Bella, but
Yeah.
she doesn't like him. And then he comes to school that because she likes Edward, and then he comes to school like the next day, like with his hair like Edward, trying to dress like him.
Yeah.
Such a dweeb. So so that was funny. I thought he was good. I thought he was good in this movie because
Yeah.
he even looks like an unlikable character. Like, no offense to the actor, to the actual person, but his look, that they, the way they had him dressed, and like everything just was kind of unlikable. Also, how delicious did that bowl of donuts
Oh
on
my
the desk of that
gosh.
one? So when Aaron, like Jeff said at the beginning, Aaron, like we opened to like see him at an interview for a job at a law firm, and the woman who is interviewing him looks, fancy and kind of like rooty tooty, but she's got this like big glass like cup, I don't know, just a goblet, but a huge one, like on her desk, of like the most beautiful, delicious donuts you'll ever see in your life. And
Yeah.
I was like, how? And and the camera keeps kind of cutting back to him, like looking at it and stuff. And at the end, after she's told him like to buzz off, she just says to him, she's like, please take a donut. Like, cause she could tell he's been like kind of like lusting after the donuts the whole
Yeah.
time, There's
It's
lots of
almost
little
like he
things.
came for the donuts and not the interview.
Exactly. But it's funny because there's a lot of little things like that throughout the movie that you think are going to add up to something, but they don't. For instance, I have another one. Um, when Aaron and Lisa go to talk to Tony Todd at that whatever the library, I guess it was,
Hmm.
um, and this the camera keeps cutting to this older woman who you would think is like the librarian, but like it I don't know, it's hard to describe. It's almost like it's somebody's private library because it's really like this small area. It's not like a big library, but like keeps giving like she keeps giving looks. She keeps throwing like looks over to Tony Todd and to the two characters that are talking to him. And I kept thinking like, okay, who's this lady then? Because the camera cut to her like 3 or 4 times during the scene, and it adds up to nothing. Like she is a nothing character, but I was like, okay, that went nowhere. Um, and also, like we talked about earlier, not nearly enough Tony Todd in this movie. He should have had a second scene after things really started going like really badly, where they like run back to him, or he, I don't know, catches up with them somehow and gives them more advice, because
Right.
there was there's just not enough Tony Todd. I mean, he had such a smattering of lines. The story they gave him to tell wasn't even that long. Like that, like I feel like his scene should have been like, I don't know. I'm just whining now. like,
No, listen,
like,
listen. I'm
why
right there
didn't they
with
have
you.
more?
I'm right there with you because I felt the same way. I'm like,
I
if
was
you're
like,
gonna say he's in the movie,
Tony,
put him in the movie.
yeah, yeah, put him in the movie. I mean, okay, so this is what I had read was that um, the people who made this movie were the same people who made the Final Destination movies, and he's
Hmm.
in he's in that, like as sort of like the, I know he's the coroner, but he's also like the one to tell them, like, a pound of flesh, and when your time comes, like all these, like,
Yeah.
advicey, life and death things that are, cosmic and biblical. And I do like that he mentioned the Bible. He mentions the Bible in in his scene in this movie, which I was like, all right, because like that means like things are getting down to business, like I was like, okay, cool, like they're gonna like, mention some historical stuff of biblical proportions, literally. I was like, in the trailer they mentioned like the Quran and the jinn, and I was just like, yes, and then, but like it was like giving you just a little piece of, like, a Ferrero Rocher chocolate, and just a
Right.
little piece of that look like delicious little bonbon, and saying like, okay, that's all you get. It's like, oh my god, that's like the most interesting part of the movie. You know what I mean? The
Yeah.
backstory of like this urn. They give you just enough so that you have like a decent like a working understanding of like what it is, and what it can do, sort of, or like what they think it maybe did, and like where, well, actually it's more of an origin story, you
Yeah.
know. So I get it, you know what I mean? Like we're supposed to be focusing on Aaron, his mom, and his ragtag group of pals, but like, I don't know. You can have a heavyweight like Tony Todd. You need
You
to
gotta.
add some minutes to that scene. You know,
Yeah.
you need
Like
to
you
let him.
gotta.
You need to let him run loose with that dialogue and just start.
Right.
Let him start improvising. You know.
You know what I really wanted to see right there is I wanted to see the actual time where Aaron's father and Tony Todd's character both were there when they got this piece,
Oh, like a
and what,
flashback scene.
yeah, like a flashback scene of, like, what happened, what were their reactions in that moment.
Yeah, right. That would have been good. And I can't. Did his father, Aaron's father, died after the archaeologist, the man in a mental hospital, killed his wife. He had to have, right? Because that happened
Yes.
like before. So what was, did Aaron's dad know about it? Did Aaron's dad like have his own, dance with the evil urn? You know what I mean? Like, is that why he's
Right.
dead? because he died of cancer, I think. He died of
Yeah.
a lung illness. And Tony Todd mentions like, oh, like that even just being near this thing can like cause people to like get sick and go mad and all these things.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, like, that wasn't explored though. It was just there amongst the things. And like you get a close up shot of this, like, looks like, I mean, I'm guessing is Satan, because he's praying. He's got angel wings, but he's got horns and he's black. And he's like, praying what looks like over like some sort of like a cauldron, maybe. Am I remembering
Yeah.
this right? You know what I'm talking about, right?
I
The
know what
little
you're talking
figure
about.
the little figurine. So it's like, obviously
Hmm.
it's like, a fallen angel. And if we're talking about things that are demonic, well, then that's probably Satan. So
Right.
um also, cut back to like, remember when he's at the gas station and he's like, oh, I'll take, what did he get, like a jug of milk? And like, oh no, he got beer.
Yeah.
Why did I think he got a jug of milk? Where did that come from? Oh my God. Anyway,
Maybe he
my
did.
my little imagination. No, I think it was a 6 pack of beer. and and he gets those scratch off tickets, right? And like he
Yeah.
gets one and then he leaves. And when he's leaving, there's like a random like clown that comes in.
Yep.
Do you think that all of this whole movie was a dream? Sometimes I got that impression, because like weird things like
Ooh.
that would pop up. And I was like, is this a freaking dream? Is this like a dream within a dream thing again? Like, did we just bump into somebody having a dream? But then he never wakes up from the dream, so I had to throw that theory out the window. But isn't that weird how he bumped right into that? I almost laughed.
That was honestly, that was the most bizarre sequence, because it's like, where does this person fit into the
Yeah,
story? Like, does he have an aversion to clowns? Like,
right.
why is there a random crazy dude that looks like he was drunk or something? Why does it look like, I mean, why is he there as a clown? It just
It
didn't
looks like
make sense.
Pennywise's. It looks like the original Pennywise's younger cousin. You know what I
Yes.
mean? And I was like,
Yes.
again, another instance, I guess, of like just things kind of going nowhere, or maybe like just to kind of punch up the horror element of the movie. You know what I mean? Like, can't just have the guy going to a gas station and winning $5,000 on a scratch off. There's got to be something
Right.
creepy about it. So anyway, I guess as we dissect this movie, Jeff, we're learning how to make a almost crappy horror movie. This is our
Yeah.
class. We're self-taught. When we make our own
Self-taught.
movie, we're going to be like, nope, we were self-taught.
That's right.
Um, so here's one thing that I thought was pretty cool about the movie. And it's not unique to this movie, but I saw that, like, this movie, like, after like when it was done, I realized this movie was one of those movies where the answers are given to you ahead of time cryptically, but
Hmm.
they're there. So like, for instance, like, you know, um, okay, we'll talk about Jeremy, Aaron's Aaron's best friend from,
Yes.
back home where he's at. So he like, Aaron is like on his porch at night one night, and there's like all of a sudden like a menacing character who looks like, the way it's presented in the dark, coming out of the shadows, almost like a zombie. And then when he sees who it is, he's like, "Oh, what's up, man?" And he's like, "Hey, Aaron, how's it going?" Because he does talk like that.
Yes, he
Has a very
does.
he has a very distinct voice. He's almost like a little boy. It's odd. And he's like, "Hey, Aaron, it's so good to see you, man. It's been years." And like, they're like hanging out, and then, so you find out later. This is just, a random aside, that Jeremy, this best friend, has been dead for over a year. So Aaron's been hanging out with a dead best friend. And I knew something was up when they were in the car, and Aaron's like, "Oh, how I wish my best friend would have visited me in the hospital." And Jeremy's like, "I don't like hospitals." And then he just like stares really weirdly, and he can hear things that like other people can't hear, and he kind of keeps pushing Aaron to like be with this urn. So it's like, okay, like something's off with him and there's something wrong, and then he just disappears and I'm like, oh, that dude is totally dead, you know. But like you would have known that immediately, like, you know, because the way they presented him as if he's dead. So,
Right.
and like lots of things, you know what I mean, lots of things. But I thought that was pretty cool about this movie. I was like, all right, you know, if you look back, like, you know, you see early on when Aaron's brushing his teeth when he's back at home, and you catch like a glimpse of a second, like there's like a second where he bends down to like rinse his mouth or clean off his face, but his image remains standing up in the mirror
Yeah.
and screaming. And that's an you know, an allusion to what happens at the end, which I'm just gonna say it. Sorry, spoilers ahead. So if you want to fast
Spoiler
forward, or
alert.
spoiler alert is so what happens is that um Aaron makes all these wishes, right? And then they just start going so wrong. Like he wishes his dad, we don't see him making this wish, I don't think, but he wishes that his dad would go back and go away. And then what happens as a result is that his mother ends up hanging herself in the farmhouse where her and the dead father used to meet and dance, because she was only happy, you know, by the fact that he had come back from the dead to be with her. So that was like an awful, um, you know, that was an awful effect of that wish. And he's considering killing himself. And then the awful town sheriff comes in, who's like a big bully. They have like kind of a scuffle, and he's like, I wish that you would never hurt Lisa again, because it's Lisa, his ex-girlfriend, is dating the sheriff. It's all this, you know, 90210 drama. And like, and you know, then it turns out that like it's just weird. The guy was a demon, really, but then the real guy is back at home, and he ends up getting killed by Aaron's other friend, who is tricked into thinking that he's out to get him. And then Lisa is part of this, and she comes out, and they all end up getting killed. And Aaron runs in, and then the djinn comes, and the djinn is there, like this, you know, this monster, like screaming at Aaron, and Aaron like kind of sucks it all up, and he's like, I wish I was dead when I got into the car accident, because he was hit by a car earlier on in the movie after he makes a wish that he was like super handsome. Like he immediately gets hit by a car, but he's not killed. He's alive. And then what happens then is that, you know, when they take off the bandages off his face, you know, he's no longer got the hair lip that Jeff mentioned earlier, and he's, you know, quote unquote handsome. And so he's, you know, all these wishes that find their way to coming true on the backs of, you know, other people. As Tony Todd says, like, you know, there can't be, you know, life without death. Like, you know, there's always a price to pay for, you know, for these things. Kind of like don't mess with it. But nobody listens. So
Nobody listens.
nobody listens, you know. I mean, whatever Tony Todd say to me, I'd listen.
Like, yes, sir.
Yes, sir. He's like, you don't eat enough alfalfa sprouts. You need to eat some every day. I'd be like, yes, sir. I will
Will
do
do.
that. Will do. In the middle of quarantine, I'll find myself some alfalfa sprouts and eat them. Again, I have no idea where alfalfa sprouts came from. Okay. Um, at least it's all healthy stuff. My subconscious is spitting
Yeah.
out. It's like milk, alfalfa.
Yeah.
All right. Um, so I mean, so okay, so he wishes. So going back to Aaron's like final act, he makes his final wish. He's like, I wish that I was dead, like after the accident, because if he had been dead, then none of all of this horrible stuff would have come to pass, right? So he's in fact trying to redeem himself. I mean, he's selfish enough that you would think that he's being just selfish, but in this moment he's actually being sincerely, you know, sort of like repentant for all the harm that he did, albeit unknowingly, because he doesn't even know for the first half of this movie what the hell's going on, and like why these random wishes that he's just like muttering like under his breath are happening. But he's trying to do the right thing. He's seeing that literally everybody around him has died, murdered, suicide, all this stuff. So he's like, all right, I wish I was dead so that everybody else would live. And so the movie cuts back to that moment of the car accident, and you see him get hit by a car, and he's laying on the road dead. And you're like, okay, cool. Like, end of the movie. It's kind of in the Final Destination vein, right?
Right.
But no, nope,
Now they kept going.
no. And you would think that, and you really think that that's the end of it, because they hold on the camera hovers over his dead face and his mangled body for like a little while, you know? No, it cuts to a really beautiful day. It's the light is just gorgeous on this shot, and it's his house, and Lynn Shay, his mom, is, you know, like looking better than she does in the whole rest of the movie. She just looks really good. She looks healthy. She looks like okay, like she's gotten a hold of herself, and she's doing all right. I should mention, like, and Javi, you can agree with me, like, she's really nasty, like throughout the whole
Yes.
movie until this last scene. She's really awful to her son. She's awful to everyone. And I don't think it's the kind of thing that just happens because her husband died. It seems like she was a pretty miserable person. Um, but all right, so fast forward to this end scene. She's out front. She's been selling all of the husband's, you know, antiquities and belongings. And Lisa, the girlfriend, has pulled up, and she's walking up towards the mother, and they're just friendly. Like, in the backstory for them is that Lisa had, you know, been like kind of helping out the mother and the father before he passed away, and especially afterwards. And she's just been kind of there for Aaron's family, um, where he should have been but wasn't. So they're chatting, and they're both talking about how they're going to make a fresh start. And Lisa's moving to Chicago, and Kate, the mother, is moving to Santa Fe, and everybody's all good. And then Kate is like, oh, um, you know, here, I want to give you something. It was in Aaron's room, and I know how much you guys loved each other. So I think you should have it. I feel like it would bring you good luck. And it's the urn. So Kate unknowingly gives Lisa the urn. Lisa takes it and, you know, ostensibly will like put it in her car and take it with her on her new life. And, you know, this evil urn will get its next life with Lisa. So there's also this quick scene where you see Aaron waking up. You think he's waking up from the dream of everything, and you see him, he's in his room, and he looks around, and then he looks in the mirror, and he's just kind of like checking himself out, like, is this real? Is everything real? Am I good? Like, did any of this really happen? Whatever. And then you realize he's trapped in the mirror. There's no Aaron on the other side, like, you know, in the real life. There's just the Aaron that's trapped behind the mirror. Oh my God. I wanted to break that mirror because he starts screaming. He starts screaming and panicking because he's trapped in the mirror. And actually, then that's when you get the whole scene between the mother and Lisa, and she walks away. And obviously, like, nobody knows it. There's a boy in the mirror. I don't know. Like, it just really got me. Like, what? Unnecessary.
Yeah.
Didn't that seem to you like what you would have seen on like the DVD or Blu-ray or whatever of like, oh, this was the deleted like final cut scene, you know, like, and
Alternate ending.
alternate ending, you know.
Yeah.
It doesn't it came across like that. And
Yeah. I mean, it did. It definitely did.
also I mean, not for nothing, but like, I thought it was kind of funny that like a major plot point in this movie at the end was that the mother finally looked like happy, at peace, like totally like serene and normal and like good. and healthy, like after her son dies.
Yes,
I just thought that was funny because it's like, what is this movie trying to say? Like
exactly.
she was devastated when her husband died, but then oops, her son dies and she's totally happy. Like now she can move on with her life. It's horrible. He was so horrible. He was such an
Yeah.
unlikable character.
Yeah, I
It was
thought
also
I thought
yeah,
about that too.
I know. I was like, what? Um, Same thing with like, it was funny that like, he tried to do the right thing and wish himself dead, all that stuff, and he ends up in a mirror and Lisa gets the vase anyway.
Yeah.
It's gonna end up killing, the girl that he loves anyway. And by the way, question for you. Does losing your soul look like being trapped in a mirror? Because the man in the mental hospital that hurt himself so that he wouldn't make another wish, um says like he doesn't say anything because he's mute, but like he writes down, like they're like, well, what happens if you make a 7 wishes? Oh my god, what happens? And he writes, lose your soul. Like, so okay, so Aaron has lost his soul. Does that look like being trapped in a mirror? Like, is I don't understand.
Here, so I'm probably thinking about this way too deeply. So I apologize with
Me too.
the
No,
ra-
I brought up the
the
question.
rabbit
So
the rabbit hole that I'm about to go down. I apologize. So I think for him that I think it traps you wherever you're most vulnerable. And if you think about it, his appearance meant a lot to him. In the beginning, his appearance was not pleasant. He didn't really want to look at himself. And then towards the end, when he had the surgery to get the facial reconstruction, he's now a handsome guy. So he kept checking himself out in the mirror. So I
yeah.
think that, I think in that case, it's trapping him where he's going to be tormented the most. For someone else, it may be something completely different.
Hmm. Okay, that makes sense. I thought it may have something to do with like him being selfish, like you know what I mean, because like which is like tied into vanity, you know what I mean? Because like
Yeah.
throughout the whole movie, everybody comes at him about how selfish he is. I mean,
Yes.
I think his dead friend was even like, "Hey, you never even came to visit," and he was like, "Oh my god, like you too, fine, late, like let me have it," because like his mom really lays into him about what a jerk he is for never coming to having come to visit like them or check in on them when his dad was dying of cancer. And then like everybody, like you could just check off, like put a little check mark next to everybody. They like all
Yeah.
complained to him about what a jerk he was and how selfish he was and how he was like spreading these like rumors about himself that he was a successful lawyer when
Yeah,
really
but he
he was
worked at a
working
coffee shop.
at a coffee shop. And I was like, what? So I don't know. I was just like, what are they trying to say? Or maybe they're not really trying to say anything. There's just kind of like a final jump scare, you know, like the clown randomly, like,
Right.
um, also, I mean, okay, so we know that to his credit, Aaron did try to do something good by wishing himself, you know, dead to so that everybody else would live. And it ended up blowing up in his face, like I said, because number one, he's trapped in a mirror, and number two, the urn or the vase or whatever it is, the urn ends up going to his the girl that he loves, Lisa, on her journeys into her new life, which is going to be terrifying. The results. So a question for you, my good man. Have you ever tried to do something good, just in general, like in life, and have it had it blow up in your face, like this dude?
Oh my goodness. I can think of a lot of examples of that. Um, unfortunately, I will. I will leave names out and specific relationships, but I'll just say that I was in a relationship and I was trying to provide and make things easier from a financial standpoint. And I did that, and unbeknownst to myself, 6 months later, uh, I would begin to struggle financially, personally, and that help that I provided actually ended up uh, making me broke,
Oh.
and then it caused a lot of other issues, and But yeah, that's one example. Like I said, I have a lot. I have a whole lot. I did.
We'll have to start a side podcast of like
Yeah,
Jeff and
just
Jesse's.
for that.
Yeah, Jeff and Jesse's good intentions.
Yeah, yeah. What about you? Have you had a situation like that?
Yeah, you know what? I've had that happen to me, like, which is funny when you're talking about like kind of get you at your most vulnerable, because like I had like good intentions in doing a couple of things like with friends, and then having it like really blow up in my face later. Um, I can think of like two good examples, but like one that sticks out more, I think, is I had this really, really good friend who I hadn't, been in contact with for like over 10 years, but we were like inseparable, when we were younger, etc. And I just, you know, was so happy to finally be back in touch with her and to be in each other's lives and kind of pick up where we left off, all this stuff. And she started going through a really hard time in her relationship, and confessed certain things to me about how difficult it had been, etc. And then she came over one night to our house. It was such a fun night. She came over to our house one night for dinner with me and my husband and my son, and we're all having a nice time. And her and I go out to my back porch after dinner, and she just starts, crying and telling me how like she just really wants to know what I think she should do about her relationship, because she was thinking about making a certain choice, whether to stay or whether to leave. And I immediately told her, like, listen, like, I hate to see you suffering, but I can't give you my opinion because I know what's going to happen. Like, I'm going
Right.
to tell you what I think. Whatever happens between you and, your partner is going to happen anyway. And then either which way it goes, I'm going to be the bad guy. And it could possibly cost me your friendship. So I really don't want to get involved in that way. I'll support you and I'm here for you, like any which way I can be, but no, like I can't tell you what to do. And she was like, no, 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 please. I just really need your help. I understand what you're saying, but like, I'm so sad. And she was devastated. She didn't know what to do. And so I went against my better judgment. And I told her, and everything that I said that would happen happened.
Oh,
And that was like, um, I don't know, 4 years ago now, maybe. And I never heard from her again.
wow.
Yeah, it was intense because we were like, BFFs to the extreme. And I was like, oh my God. And I remember I reached out to her once, and she just was completely like cold and just like, nope, and I was like, oh wow. So yeah, blew up in my face, tried to do something good, tried to help her out, be there for a
Yeah.
friend. Nope.
Yeah.
Cost me the friendship. I was like, well, all
Yeah.
right. So those are our tales of, being idiots. For being nice and getting
Yeah.
punished for it.
Yeah.
Thanks. And yeah, so we'll wrap up this new podcast called That's Life, That Stinks. But all All right, Jeff. So, okay, the final wish. Give me your final headstone count for this movie. How many headstones would you give it?
Oh, um, I am going to give it a 2.5.
Okay.
And one, I felt like there were a lot of holes that just didn't make sense in the plot. I
Mm-hmm.
felt like they could have given us a little more explanation in terms of how the reaction to receiving the urn, maybe even going back so far in time to discuss the origins of it that way to show us a visual of it. Um, Also, what happened to Aaron? Like, how did his lip end up that way? We heard it
Mm.
referenced, but we didn't receive anything as to why. And did that change the type of person that he was? Um, so I just felt like there were some things that were left out that probably should have been explained. But I felt like it was an entertaining movie. I didn't get bored watching it, and I enjoyed it. I wish those things would have happened. And the last thing I'll say is I wish there was more Tony Todd.
Yep, I hear you. All right. All good reasons, totally understandable.
Yeah,
Um, would you get a tattoo of this movie?
not of this movie. No,
Okay.
no.
All right. I'm going to go ahead. I was going to give it 3 headstones, but I think you talked me down. I think I'm going to give it 2.5. I'm like, I think 3 might be too much. Like, see, I want to
Yeah,
give it 3 because Tony Todd is in it,
yeah,
but then I have to lower the rating because they didn't have enough Tony Todd. You know what I
exactly.
mean? So it gets like, it gets shot in its own foot for like not doing the right thing. Um, yeah, I agree with you. There's like a ton of plot holes. There's a lot of weird fake outs, like I was talking about, that kind of people and places that lead to nowhere. Um, there are no likable characters in this movie at all, in my opinion, and it was entertaining. I would not say like I wouldn't tell somebody not to watch it, but it's not one that I would, like go around recommending. I wouldn't write like
Right.
a good review for this movie, but I wouldn't, I read an interview with Michael Welsh, and it was so terrible, the interview, because he constantly kept contradicting himself about like how it was to film the movie and work with the director, which kind of like brought the movies, like the opinion of the movie, a little bit further down for me, because I felt like everything he said was bogus, and so this was probably maybe this was just like a movie just to be made for the money kind of thing for everybody, and maybe just for like I was as I was watching the credits, because I'm a total nerd, and I watch the credits on all movies like from top to bottom. As I was watching the credits, I was like looking at the names of like the cinematographer and like the assistant and like the hair people and and the hair intern, and I'm like, this is a movie that like people made to like get experience making movies and to like pad their resume. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's what this was. So I'm gonna go with 2.5 headstones.
Okay.
Yeah. And I would not get this movie tattooed at all.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah. Well, Jeff, this has been another lovely evening chatting about
Yes,
horror movies.
absolutely.
I definitely want to talk more about, maybe we could do this for, on next week's episode, but I definitely want to talk more about like what makes a horror movie horror. Because I was thinking like this movie brought the question to my mind, because it seemed like what we talked about earlier about how there's this, they dropped in little things that were scary or twisted, just maybe to kind of punch up the horror factor that maybe weren't really even necessary. The
Yeah.
clown, the woman looking at them creepily and stuff. It didn't need to be that way. So like what are some of the characteristics that make a horror movie a horror movie? I mean, I'm sure there's lots and lots of essays and books and whatnot. I mean, I have a bunch of books on horror, so I know there's a lot of books on it. But
Yeah.
let's sort of like our opinions.
Yeah.
What we think makes a horror movie. Because there's lots of movies that I think about like for our podcast. For us to talk about, and I'm like, that's technically not a horror movie, even though it's really scary.
Well, we can definitely cover those. Doesn't have to
Yeah,
be doesn't have to be parked in that genre.
yeah. We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. The one thing I will say before we go
Yeah.
is, and this is just me being a African American male,
Uh huh.
I have no idea why the black guy's name was Tyrone.
Oh, weird. I didn't even remember his name. Not even in
That
the movie.
it bothered me so bad when the sheriff was like, "Oh yeah, Tyrone." Like that's such a it's a dog whistle, and it bothered
Yeah.
me. And yeah, that's all I'm gonna say about that.
No, but you have a point because the sheriff guy, Lisa's boyfriend, what was his name? Like Darnell or something? Like Daryl, right?
Daryl,
He
yeah.
seemed,
No,
he was,
Derek,
Derek,
yeah.
he was particularly pissed off that Tyrone had dated Lisa.
Oh yeah,
He was he was like, all right, like he was kind of like sassing Aaron a little bit because that's like Lisa's ex-boyfriend or whatever, but like he was like rabid about Tyrone, and that is, yeah, I didn't even think of that. That's an alarm bell going off right there.
yeah,
What is that saying then?
yeah. Have a
Hmm.
lot of questions.
And he was the one who hit Aaron with his car. He was the supposed ex-alcoholic. He was, all these things.
Yep.
Hmm. Don't like that.
Don't like it at all.
Maybe take it down another half headstone.
Yeah,
maybe just two headstones. Final wish.
maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, this has been fun. We're gonna do it again next week, as always.
Yes.
And
Thank you all for listening.
yeah, yeah. Now we're all over the place, so that's a good thing. You
Dude, we
you
blew
can
up.
listen
We
to
blew
us.
up.
Yeah, we
We
did.
we blew up. We were like, we're coming out and getting ours. We are on iTunes. I'm sorry, not iTunes, Apple Podcasts. We're on Google Podcasts. We're on all of them. Wherever you can get a podcast, that's where we're at.
Yeah.
And you can always write to us, movies to be murdered by at gmail.com. On Instagram, movies to be murdered by podcast. We're on Twitter, the 2TO_murdered, right? I can never keep that
That's
straight.
it. Listen,
And
that
yeah,
was a Twitter special, so thanks,
I
Twitter.
know. But if you look for the hashtag movies to be murdered by, you'll find us there. And you'll find us everywhere because we're all over the world.
That's right. That's right. We're internationally known at this point, so
I mean, you can't keep up with us. Oh my God, how could, and oh my gosh, we almost forgot our biggest news of the week. We are
that's
now
right.
part of the Movie John podcast family. Ta-da!
Yes.
Thank you so much, Movie John, for taking us under your broad wings and making us family. So yeah, so y'all
Right.
can find us now also on moviejawn.com. That is moviejawn, JAWN.com. Under their podcast section, you just, look for movies to be murdered by, and you'll see our page there. Also, while you're there, check out their awesome reviews and Everything Movie John, because they're the best. Um, Based out of Philadelphia, they're the best destination for all things movies.
Awesome stuff. I'm
Yeah,
excited to. I'm excited that we're a part of it now. So
yeah, me too. Me
yeah,
too. We've officially arrived.
we have.
We
We're
have.
we're there. We're
We're
there.
there. You were there. We're there. You want to try to kick us around? Not anymore, because we're part of the podcast gang at Movie John.
That's right.
We've got a gang.
That's right.
So back off, Busters. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for listening to Movies to Be Murdered By. This has been another awesome episode with Jeff Watson and Detective Jessie Drew.
That's right.
Yep, hunting down the movies and within the horror genre to watch so that you don't have to, or so that you can go out and look for. This
Yeah.
one, we both agree 2.5 headstones. Maybe if you're bored. If
Yeah.
you're a Tony Todd or Lynn Shay completist, then yeah, give it a watch and check it off of your list.
Well, thanks guys for listening. We'll talk to you again next Friday.
Next Friday. Bye.